As repeating is that the process, the system was only supposed to work forward going, not by way of back tallying, meaning 34A, the aggregate of the 34A was to create the 34B, and the 34B aggregate would create 34C once. 34A, as many as there are polling stations, etc., going forward. But what you see from the report of Mr. Njoroge is after the voting, until the results are announced, far too much activity, all starting with the generation of a 34C. The analyst is not able to know exactly what is going on, but it can be surmised from the abbreviated logs that show you're seeking to generate a document, and in computer parlance, that means you're seeking to edit something. You're seeking to change something. My hypothesis from where I stand is, and I'll state at the very end, clearly a result for the first respondent, that is Mr. Ruto, was being arrived at well before the tally was in. And each time, work was being done to try and fit A and B into that result. And through the confusion, because people who engage in such exercises make mistakes, at the very end, the result is forced on Kenyans through a defective 34C, where the commissioners cannot agree, and Mr. Chebukati walks and says, it doesn't matter, third respondent, it is my result, and you can tell what you want to the birds at Serena. So, the process ought to have been, ideally, 46,232 Form 34As ought to have been generated into 291 34Bs, and in turn have generated one, I repeat, one 34C. However, you will find, your ladyships and my lords, that an analysis of the logs show several regeneration of 34Cs, which in turn lead to what I have just described. But at all times, you see a downloading of 34As in the CSV format, which is the editable format. Page 20, 21 and 22 show that as of 21st of August 2022, the hours are 15:48:33 seconds. A Form 34C had already been generated. I repeat that. As of 12th August 2022, 15:48 and 43 seconds, a Form 34C had already been generated. The results were hardly in, according to IBC. What was the business of anyone within that system generating a 34C? We were 2 days away from the final announcement. Page 23 also shows that similar transactions as the one on 12th August 2022 was done on the 14th of August 2022 at 3:57 and 1 second. Page 23 shows that Form 34C was received in a PDF format at 3:57:01. Thereafter, instructions issued to the system to receive data to create 34C. And thereafter, an action of starting document Form C generation is commenced and finally was successful. Page 25 shows the above action was repeated on the same day at 4:1:33, and it goes on and on. I don't wish to take up too much time. It is all clear. Page 65 shows on the 14th of August 2022 at 15:34:12, there is an ambiguous and intentional modification overriding the whole process to finally generate Form C document. Data from Form 34B is then entered only once into the Form C, when there should be several entries to the Form C on different dates. Page 15 shows that there's a presence of illicit data in the presidential tallying system. Illicit means unexpected. There was plenty of Form 35Bs, which should not have been in the same portal. I move on. This you will find is repeated on and on. Page 43, 76, and 77. We see IBC personnel who were not gazetted for the purposes of the restricted and accountable access to the system were granted access to the system. In particular, the personal assistant of the chairman of the third respondent, Mr. Dixon Kwanusu, is granted access. As a rejoinder, we have seen a belated authority to have such access, which is well after the election. But he is not gazetted, so he is invisible. This court, if we hadn't brought the logs, it would never have been known that Mr. Dixon Kwanusu had wide powers in this system. So, whilst in this dispute, we may not see the fingerprints of the third respondent in the ICT system, we see his palm, his much larger presence through the actions of his PA. Indeed, you will find, when you study the system, that Dixon Kwanusu performed a purported verification process of 34A's 1,743 times. The same scrutiny revealed that at page 28, one Abdi Dahir, who was not gazetted and who is belatedly granted access and privileges to the system, purportedly verified 659 Form 34As. Yeah. So, I ask the court to look at the affidavits of Ben Wasonga. He is also another computer forensic expert. His evidence is substantially the same as George Njoroge. I will ask the court to note that the tender documents did provide that whoever was to provide the system was to be able to provide a KIMS kit that would provide compressed color photograph images using a compression technique that is in compliance with JPEG. However, the court will find that all finally displayed Form 34As were in black and white. I will shortly mention that it becomes evident that there is interception of data. It's called a man-in-the-middle or machine-in-the-middle attack, and it gives probability and great, it supports fully the evidence of George Njoroge and John Githongo that in fact the system had unauthorized persons. I would go quickly to the evidence of again, Benson, who in his affidavit shows that there was not only one foreigner involved, there was several of them, and the ones I had mentioned earlier, and throughout the process of counting, several of them were involved as super administrators. Super administrators is the power to even create and join servers to the system, change, alter documents, delete documents. This is at page 2 of paragraph 9 of the affidavit sworn on 28th August 2022, where the super administrator, in this case, the one J.C.A. Margo, who occasionally uses a different name, is able to create user accounts, install applications, change user roles, assign resources, read documents, write documents, modify or edit documents, and delete documents. I honorably suggest that it shows that this election was controlled from everywhere except IEBC. And I have read the affidavit of Mr. Chebukati. He suggests that the Venezuelans felt harassed after their arrest and left the country, but I respectfully submit that they remained fully connected to the IEBC servers. I have said page 3, paragraph 8 shows the unauthorized users accessing the system, a total of 6 of them being, I found the page, is C. Silva, Josio, Vito, JCA, Margo, Ogudino, and J. Lugo. I conclude by saying, what is the response of all these very serious allegations? I say that we get it from the affidavits of the 4 commissioners who have differed with the chairman. They have stated categorically that that whole system was created by was controlled by one person, the third respondent. They were kept in the dark. Mr. Nyangaya, who was in charge of ICT, was also shocked that foreigners were controlling the system and had access during and after the election. And I point out that Mr. Chebukati did not offer this to the court in his replying affidavit, and it only was offered through his subordinates when the evidence was availed. I conclude by submitting that what we have before the court is clearly a corrupted, and I'm not talking about a person, I'm talking about the verb, a corrupted and compromised RTS system which does not meet the demands of the Constitution and the Act. And it is a matter that will be determined after scrutiny whether something can